Upskilling has grown to become a necessity in the past few years. 2020 made us realize the importance of updating our skills, including soft skills. Our next speaker is a veteran of the technology industry. She's the first woman to become the president of NASSCOM. Please welcome the fifth president of NASSCOM, Debjani Ghosh. She will talk about soft skills for the future. Senior journalist Kaveri Bamzai will join the conversation as well.
Today we're going to talk to her about soft skills in particular. I think that's been on top of our minds in the past few months, especially with the pandemic. We've all been wondering about our jobs. We've been wondering about our children. Our children have been wondering about their future. And at the top of our minds is really not just about education, but also the soft skills that we all seem to require in this new world. So, Debjani, I'd like to start off right away by, sort of plunging in at the deep end and asking you what are the things that really you think we need to learn, especially engineers. There's a huge skill gap, as we all know, in what they learn and what the job market requires of them. How do we bridge that? And how can you help us learn how to do that?
So, Kaveri, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And that introduction completely threw me off. that that sort of made me think a bit. But lovely talking to you. And it's such an important question that you are asking because, traditionally we have just felt put the child into engineering college and
Right.
you're done with, right? Especially if it's a good engineering college, the child is going to come out with
Yeah.
5 job offers, if not
Yeah.
more, and you are done. You're settled for life. What we are finding right now is no disrespect meant to any institutes, and I think all institutes are trying hard to keep up. But the fact is, Kavri, that technology is changing the pace at which we do things and how we do things faster than anything you and I are used to. We are
Right.
right now seeing the kind of change that we are seeing is what we call exponential change,
Mhm.
where everything doubles every time it increases, right? And we as humans are totally not used to anything that changes so fast.
Right.
So for an education system that takes 15 plus years to churn out the final product, and where the curriculum is based on books that were written, if not maybe 10, 20, I think 100 years back,
Right.
it becomes definitely very, very difficult to create uh, uh, the skills that are right now needed by the industry. So there's this complete mismatch. As an industry, and I'm talking here about the tech industry, as a tech industry, what we need primarily, be it an engineer or be it, you know, whatever field you come from, the first skill we require is learnability. How quickly can you unlearn and how quickly can you learn? In fact, one of the things I always advise young people whenever I'm talking to them is figure out how to demonstrate learnability, because that is what will get you through interviews.
Right.
Nothing else. It's the hunger for learning, being able to talk about the books that you have read, being
Right.
able to talk about the learning communities that you are part of, etc., becomes tremendously important. And then we are looking at foundations. So, how good is your foundation in science, maths? How good is your foundation in some of the newer areas, especially, for example, if you have applied for the position of a data analytics?
Yeah.
How good is your foundation in AI and data science?
Right.
How good is your foundation in statistics? So, relative to the field that you have applied, how good is your foundation? And then the third thing we look at is what you talked about, and which today's world has become tremendously important: professional skills.
Hmm.
I do not like to call them soft skills, Kaveri, because somehow in our minds, we
Yeah.
have, given that a negative. It's like soft skills are women's skills. I don't
Yeah.
get that
Yeah.
nonsense.
That's
I just
true.
totally don't get that
Yeah.
nonsense. I'm happy if they're women's skills because then women have an upper hand.
Yes,
Those skills are tremendously important. To me, they are professional skills:
that's true.
communication, collaboration, uh, design thinking, uh, ability to influence other people. In fact, a classic interview question that you will get is, um, influence someone to buy this product right now.
Yeah,
Let's see how you do it.
yeah,
How good are you, right? So these are the skills that become tremendously important. And earlier we used to say engineers can sit in the back room and code,
mm,
and as long as they know how to code well, we are good, right? Because our job required it. As an industry, we were creating payroll solutions and
mm,
other solutions and scaling them across companies. Today, the nature of work has completely changed. Today, we are creating individualized end to end solutions with our customers.
mm,
We are sitting down and figuring out how do we digitize their entire sales process, HR processes, business operations. So, you need your engineers out there.
right.
You need them in front of the customers. You need them to be talking to the customers and jointly figuring out these solutions. So an engineer who can't speak or is not comfortable speaking is useless.
Yeah,
And another, there's a lot of hype about data analytics and data science in
yeah,
India. There are two things which is a must for you to be a good data science that will find a job, a good data scientist or a good data. And then let me start, forget data scientist. Let me start with data analyst. That's easier
mm,
for you to find a job. First and foremost, how good is your statistics?
mm,
It's amazing how many people will come and say we are interested in data analytics but have not taken statistics.
mm,
Statistics is like a must. You have to research your
yeah,
fields, you have to see
right.
what is needed. And the second thing is surprisingly storytelling.
Yeah,
Because if you cannot tell the story well,
mm,
the insights is useless.
yeah,
It will not be used. So that is the level of change we are seeing. And I sort of categorize them in those three broad skills, the foundation courses, the professional courses skills, and then last but not the least, you have to very convincingly demonstrate your learnability or your aptitude to learn.
right. And how far are we from our goal of actually getting there? We have a new education policy in place. I'm sure you've seen it, which of course talks about all these things and talks about experiential learning. But how far are we from sort of completely reorienting our system? Because before the students, the teachers have to learn how to, unlearn and teach again.
I don't know if there's a goalpost that we can
Yeah,
put there because, we have arrived here after so many millions and millions of years
yeah,
of doing things a certain way. We are here. Definitely don't believe things will change overnight. But what we are seeing is bits and pieces of reforms and improvements happening. And as long as they happen fast and they happen at the right places, as long as we keep moving forward, I'm hopeful.
right.
I have no idea if there's a goalpost because, by the time we are near the goalpost, say 10, 15 years from now, the goalpost might be have completely changed
Absolutely.
because we are in such an industry. So I don't know, Kavri, but I guess what we have to measure. I mean, for the first thing, you talked about the national education policy. I'm a big fan of it. There's so many things in it that they have got right. I think key will be now how do you implement that?
Yeah,
It's going to be critical. And when we implement it, we have to support it. I mean, when AICT came out with the announcement that they didn't say you don't need science and maths to be an engineer, but
yeah,
they said that they would welcome people with liberal arts, etc.,
exactly.
to try engineering as long as there are bridge courses, which is exactly the need of the hour.
And which the
But then
NEP talks about interdisciplinary studies.
absolutely, but look at the hue and
Yeah,
cry. So it's like for every step we take forward, we ourselves bring ourselves back 10 steps. So but I guess that's human nature. So as long as we can continue to take the steps forward, we are good.
What about the reorienting of the industry, Debjani? There's so much talk about, India, of course, being a leader in the back office, but perhaps not being a leader in AI, which is the need of the hour, and China outstripping us and all that conversation. What do we need to do there?
First of all, it's too early to determine who's leading what.
Right.
AI is a very, 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 very long marathon,
Yeah.
and it's just about started. We've just started running, right? So I think we have to be fair to ourselves and stop saying someone has, nobody has reached the lead. The race to AI leadership is still on, and it's a
Right.
marathon, it's not
Right.
a sprint. I think that's good to understand. With the kind of resources China and US have invested, especially in research, I think they're way ahead of all other countries. I think here countries like India have to be very clever about what are the strengths that there's no point competing with on everything, right? We have to figure out where do we want to compete, where
Right.
can we make the maximum impact, have the maximum difference, and where what are we good at, where do we have our inherent strengths. One of the areas where we have a very strong competitive advantage compared to any other country, be it China or US, is talent.
Right.
So for years, India has led the world when it came to STEM talent.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity, we actually have an upper hand to convert that advantage into an advantage in the digital era,
Right.
and start building digital skills. And I keep saying that India has to become what Israel did for the startup world. It
Yeah.
became the startup nation to the world. India has to become the digital talent nation to the world,
Hmm.
because talent is what will determine investments, competition, where the money will go, where companies will go. Talent is the biggest, it's such a scarce resource today, good talent, that if we can start building or becoming the base for digital talent that the world needs, the world will have to come to us.
Yeah.
So talent is one place where I do believe that we can definitely lead. Then we have to pick and choose. For example, agriculture.
Hmm.
It's not something a lot of countries will focus on, but for India, it is critical.
Right.
So we could pick that vertical and really build our R&D capabilities, et cetera, in agriculture to go and lead the world. And there could be other verticals like that. Um, so I would say we need to have a very segmented strategy for AI rather than going after everything.
Yeah, and you talked about the being the digital talent nation, and it doesn't necessarily then have to be exported, right? You can be anywhere in the world now and work from wherever you are.
You can be anywhere in the world, anywhere in India, work from where you are, contribute to your company's development. One of the examples I always give is Zoho.
Yeah.
Uh, Sridhar Vembu, first of all, sitting in the village, running the entire organization from the village, and not just that, he has now started setting up teams. So he was telling me that one of the development teams that actually works on one of the leading cutting edge products of Zoho is based in the village.
Wow.
And he is investing in the village in terms of improving their education, etc. So he can also hire people locally, right? Now, I think that's the beauty of this so called future of work that we are getting into, where working from anywhere, anytime will be a possibility. Um, it comes with a lot of pros and cons, Kaveri. So I don't want to say it's all perfect and it's all fantastic out there. It comes with a lot of pros and cons. But if we can navigate through the pros and cons and leverage it effectively, it will definitely increase India's competitive advantage.
What are the other areas? What about education and health? I think more than ever the pandemic showed us that these are two areas that India could really be the world's center in a way. Is it possible to leverage AI in these two fields and really become a global leader?
Oh, AI can be leveraged wherever we want it to be leveraged. So see, if you're talking about health, there is a lot of efforts that's going on in health across the globe, and the kind of R&D investments that some of the countries are making in health tech and AI in health, it'll be very difficult for India to match at a holistic level. But then if you start identifying specific problems, for example, one of the biggest problems in healthcare in India is the last mile access.
Yeah.
Because for us, last mile access has to happen in very low resource settings, right? And talking about low resource, it could be, it's not just socioeconomic, right? But low broadband connectivity,
Right.
infrastructure's poor, our roads may not exist. So for us, the problem with healthcare is the last mile delivery. That's where it breaks down. Now, that's a unique challenge that India can solve because the rest of the world is focused on a lot of the big stuff, right? Now, we can go and solve some of these problems, which will not just help India, but will help millions and maybe billions of people across countries
Good.
like Africa and Asia, where they too are facing similar challenges with respect to last mile delivery. So once again, it is important for India to find those need, it's, I don't know if it's a niche or those specific problem statements where we can have an upper hand, and we can build our leadership at a global level. So it's going to be very, very important for us to do that. And education, one of the things that I think one of the, and it's not just in education, but it applies to education tremendously. One of the things, again, challenges we face is access to good education, access to good teachers, especially at the last mile, right? So the deeper you go, access to good teachers becomes a big problem. Now, you may find good teachers and you may be able to, through technologies like AI, you can teleport them, or you can have video conferencing
Right.
sessions. But the problem is India does not speak one language.
Yeah.
India speaks multiple languages. So unless you have a teacher who's fluent in all the languages, his or her ability to influence will be restricted to only that segment of audience who understand the language she is speaking, right? Now imagine AI being used to convert what I'm saying to you in English at simultaneously, at the same time, real time, to all the different Indian languages. That's the power of natural language processing in AI. And if we could work on that, we could. It will require a lot of R&D efforts, but if we could work on that to create those capabilities, um, imagine the impact on India, and of course the impact on the world.
Right. What is the state of our public-private partnerships currently? Do you feel that the private sector understands, and I'm not talking about just the IT companies, of course they know that, but do you feel the non-IT companies still, which are regarded as brick and mortar companies, understand the power of AI, understand the investments that need to be made, the things that they can do, perhaps in partnership with the government or state governments?
I think COVID has taught us there are no more brick and mortar companies.
Right.
And if you continue to choose to be only a brick and mortar company, you may not have a sustainable future. I
Right.
think that's a hard lesson that COVID has taught us. I mean, today, every company is digital. Every company is digital. It doesn't matter what you do. And I think it's you asked a great question, because CEOs today are no more debating whether they should automate or not. CEOs are debating how fast.
How fast? Yeah.
How fast, and how do they do it in a way that it will strengthen their competitive advantage over the others, right? That's the debate, that's the discussion that we are having. And one of the feedback, or one of the things that I always advise any CEO who speaks to me about automating her company is, technology is getting democratized. You can procure all the solutions you want, so will your competition. What is going to differentiate you, what's going to be your biggest differentiator is the people, your people. Do you have people who can leverage the technology better than your competition? That's what's going to determine whether you're going to be more successful or less successful. So it's going to be very important, because this is something, see, the IT industry has always been a knowledge industry.
Yeah.
So for us, people come first, no matter what. But this is a new mindset for the traditional analog industries to understand that it's not the technology, but it's really the people. And therefore, everything I talked about with respect to talent in your first question today applies to all of them.
But Debjani, do you see that respect for people first? Because, during the pandemic, we saw such large scale retrenchments. They were so heartbreaking. They've destroyed families, they've destroyed people. And they really didn't seem to be. I'm not saying that everyone was perhaps equally talented, but there didn't seem to be a respect for talent, for experience among a lot of the companies that, issued such large scale retrenchments. Do you feel that mindset is changing, or is it still that one person is as good as another?
No, mindset is definitely changing, and frankly, it has to change in order for companies to survive. But again, every time we talk about Indian mindset, I always remind people that count the number of years it's taken us to build a certain mindset.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very, very difficult to disrupt. But there is one thing I want to bring out here, Kavri, which is, again, I'm just talking technology industry here, but this applies to all other industries. NASSCOM does an annual report card, strategic review for the IT industry, for the tech industry, and we publish it in Feb every year. So this year, when we published it, just looking at jobs, while our industry thankfully emerged as a net employer of jobs, we created more jobs than what we went into 2020 with. But then what we saw was a major shift between the new age digital jobs and the traditional jobs, even within our industry. So traditional workforce went down from 80% to around 70%, but the digital workforce went up from 20% to around 26 or 28%, right? So now that is what's happening across. It's happening across industries. So you can't, now I'm not excusing companies that fire people without a cause, especially in a crisis. I think that is just not done. But for a company to be to it's all about businesses being more competitive. It's about businesses building beating competition. And as I said, ultimately it comes down to the talent and the people, right? Companies need people for the with the right skills.
Yes.
So if you and I, as employees, refuse to get skilled, if you and I, as employees, say, no, we've done our job for 30 years, so we will continue doing our job the same way, sooner than later, unfortunately, we are not going to be relevant anymore.
That's true.
Because the jobs that require those traditional skills across industry, it's happening in your industry, in the media industry, it's happening in our industry, it's happening across. Those jobs that require traditional skills are fast going down.
Right.
They are being replaced by new jobs. So net job creation is happening faster than job displacement.
Yeah.
But we are not skilling ourselves fast enough to keep up with that. I mean, just today, if you look at some of the data points, I'm just talking about India, not even the world, right? If you look at India, roughly our demand for digital jobs, data analytics, robotics, etc., is growing around maybe 32% CAGR.
Wow.
Right? The supply is somewhere in the range of 28%. So there's a big gap.
Big gap.
There's a huge gap that we have today. So the jobs exist, but the question that we have to ask is, do you have the right skills for the kind of jobs that exist today?
Yeah. And is your company willing to perhaps invest in you as well? That's
You know,
another.
Kaveri, I would say, given how important this is for employability, Whether your company is willing to invest or not, you invest in yourself. This
Right.
is this is like, or you buy, I'm sure you buy life insurance,
Yeah.
right? Or you invest in a pension fund or something
Yeah.
to make sure that it looks after you when you need it.
Right.
Investment in skills is exactly like that. You
Right.
make the investment today, it will pay off for the rest of your life because it'll keep you employable.
Right. Debjani, let's talk a little about women, because we've seen both the good and bad sides. Women, while they have been liberated to a great extent by the idea of working from home, it has also been seen to be a double burden, that
Yeah, yeah.
and we've seen both cases. So, what has your understanding been of how to take this forward and how to have more women in the workforce, not just at the bottom, in the middle, but also right at the top?
Um, so one is, each level requires a different strategy,
Yeah,
and we can't generalize and say just do this and it'll
yeah,
solve all our problems. It won't. I mean, you are a very different woman from who I am,
yeah,
and we will need individualized strategies. But I think there are few things. One is, there has to be a push and a pull. It's not just what the companies do; it's also what the women are doing. Right today, for example, NASSCOM runs with the government the National Digital Skilling Initiative called
right,
Future Skills Prime. Right. Um, why is it, and I ask this question in all sincerity, why is it that women participation, when even when it is free, is less than 30%? Why is it that at least, you know for I don't know the exact, I don't remember the exact percentage, but say let's assume that for every man that signs on, around 20% actually complete courses. I'm just giving a
yeah,
hypothetical number. It could be 20, it could be 30, or whatever. The number of women is less than half of that who complete a course.
right,
Why is it? And we have to, and this is a hard question we have to ask ourselves.
right,
you know Nobody else is going to solve this problem for us. See, today I honestly believe that the talent shortage is creating, and you may not like the sound of it, but it is creating opportunities, because companies, when faced with talent shortage, will be forced to give up all the filters they have so far applied to talent: gender filter, what city filter, whatever filter, location filter. They will have to give up on those filters because they do not have a choice.
right,
They have to find the best talent, whatever shape, size it exists in, wherever it exists. Now, like it or not, this does create opportunities, because, like COVID significantly accelerated digital transformation, I think the talent shortage will
yeah,
significantly accelerate reforms in how we hire and how we retain people,
mm,
right? It is going to be about employees with talent.
mm,
They are going to have the negotiating power.
mm,
So, this $1 million question for me is, what are we waiting for?
yeah,
When you or I walk in for an interview, can we with 100% confidence say that, and thump the table and say, we are the best talent you can find, and
right,
here is why? Most women are still not doing that.
right,
They're not. In fact, I just had an interview this morning. I was interviewing someone and I asked her, I said, for this is a very important job and I need to find the best talent for it. Can you tell me if you are the best talent? And she literally ducked under the table and said, it's not about being the best talent, or I will give my best. Whereas a guy I had
you
the
did
same
say, yeah,
absolutely said, I'm your man.
yeah,
I can do the job better than anyone else. And by the way, she had better skills,
yeah,
on
typical.
paper at least.
They've done it with that social conditioning. It's that whole imposter syndrome, isn't it? We've grown up with that idea. We have to get out of that, no?
Recovery, I mean, this is like holding on to a tree and saying, I can't move.
Yeah,
You know, if you really want to move, let go of the tree and
Right.
start moving, right? I think there's enough of an ecosystem, there's enough of a tribe mentality that is now building to say
Yeah.
we have to move forward and we are going to take others along with us,
Right.
right? So on one hand, I think something has to change within us.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that the gender card is not going to work. It's the skill card.
Yeah.
Skill card is most important. And when we walk into interviews, if we don't have a skill advantage, we have nothing. I think it's important for us to realize that and start getting our act together with respect to how we skill ourselves and how fast. On the company side, I think a few things are happening. As I said, um, the shortage of talent will force companies to become much more inclusive.
Yay.
So many CEOs today are relooking at the language they use in
Yeah.
job descriptions,
Right.
language they use in requisitions that they send out, to see if that language is inclusive enough, or it actually, and it's a fantastic thing to do,
Absolutely.
fantastic thing. But why are they doing it? They're not doing it all of a sudden because they've woken up to diversity.
Yeah.
They're doing it because they realize unless they make those changes, they're not going to be able to find the best talent if the talent happens to be a woman, right? So I think the talent shortage is making companies take a very hard look at how they hire, how they find talent, the language, the practices, the processes, all of that is good stuff. Will it change overnight? No, but it will gradually keep changing. I think remote work is also good as long as the woman has the choice to decide whether it's amazing that there are more women coming to me and saying, I want to get back to work, to
Yeah.
office, than men.
Yeah.
But then I have to get out of this
Exactly.
craziness. I need,
Because you're on call 24/7. There's no option.
I, and I think until Indian men go through a major mindset change where they suddenly wake up one morning and realize that I have to contribute to housework,
Yeah.
which by the way a lot of good men do,
Yeah.
but it's still not the majority mindset. And until and unless that happens, the woman is going to be tasked with all the household chores, like it or not. So women are actually dying to get out of the house and
Yeah.
come back to work, right? So I think it's important for companies to realize that don't make the mistake of saying just because she's a woman, she'll be happy to work from home.
Right.
Give her the choice. Give her the choice. Let her decide. Indian homes, a lot of Indian homes are not meant for work from home.
Yeah.
So we have to think through all these things, but that having the choice will be brilliant.
Right.
Even to say that 3 days I'll go to office, 2 days I'll work from home.
Exactly.
That,
Exactly.
that will be brilliant.
Debjani, it's such an exciting time to be in this industry. I mean, you've been in this industry now for what, over 2-3 decades. Has this been even more exciting than the opportunity of we had during Y2K? I still remember how excited we were as a country that yay, we were solving the problems of the world. But it's both a crisis and an opportunity, isn't it? Does it
Absolutely,
excite you,
absolutely.
inspire you?
I When I wake up in the morning, I honestly thank my stars
Yeah.
for being in this industry, for having the job that I have, because it's not for me, I don't have a front row seat to the greatest show of my life, but I'm a cast.
Yeah.
I'm right in the middle of it,
Right.
and often as NASSCOM, we get to play the role of ringmaster,
Yeah.
which is fantastic, or a catalyst, which is fantastic, right? So it is so inspiring because Gabri, I honestly believe that while we've talked about tech for good for years and
Yeah.
years and years, it's with COVID, we finally realized what the true potential of technology is.
Absolutely.
What can technology really do for us? How it can so significantly improve our lives. I think now that we have realized, and we've also realized the power of innovation,
Yeah.
discovering the vaccine in 9 months.
Yeah.
my God, hats off to the scientists all over the world, right? But we've discovered the power of science. We've discovered the power of tech for good. We've discovered the power of innovation. And now I think we know enough to say we can't give up on it.
Yeah.
We have to now put it to work to solve. COVID is no way solved. We have to continue to work on that challenge, but other bigger challenges like sustainability, like climate change, how do we continue to improve in those areas? So for me, I think what we have seen till now is like a trailer. So that is very exciting because the full movie is still waiting to
Well,
happen.
yeah.
That's tremendously exciting. But yes, I think it's going to be very important for us to put down very clearly the design principles for how we use technology.
Right.
Because I often hear technology causes harm, and I violently disagree with that statement because technology, at least as of now, cannot think for itself and decide whether it wants to do harm or it wants to do good.
Yeah.
Us humans who
Yeah.
decide whether we are going to use it or misuse it, right? So it's going to be very important to have those design principles and what I call responsible build and use of tech. And I think that's the biggest challenge that's facing our industry and something we have to get right if we want to continue to see sustainable growth in our industry.
Debjani, there's been so much conversation around precisely that, especially in the Silicon Valley, in terms of privacy, in terms of the access people have to knowledge about other people, especially the big four, the GAFA. And there's been a lot of rethinking about that. Do you subscribe to that?
Silicon Valley and the discussions are interesting.
Hmm.
I absolutely read about it. But as I can't remember who said it, but there was someone who said it brilliantly that Silicon Valley doesn't really have any big problems to solve.
That's true.
So it's great. The thought leadership is great, but I like to bring it to the context of the real world
Yeah.
and the problems that we have to solve to see how effective those discussions are. I'm a strong believer that we have to ensure, we have to build a framework for responsible build of technology and responsible use of technology.
Right.
And that framework cannot be driven by one-sided regulation that we leave to government or whoever, because a lot of people have said, oh, let the government figure out how they want to regulate us.
Yeah.
I do not subscribe to that. I do believe that it takes two to tango, and industry has to play a role to think about how it's going to self-regulate itself, and government will have to play a role to think about how it sets up a broad regulatory framework, and the two together have to create that holistic framework to figure out how we as an industry build and use technology responsibly. But it can't be we can't be pointing fingers and saying, oh, it's the government's responsibility to do it. It's the government and industry that has to play a role.
Debjani, what are you most proud of during your tenure at NASSCOM, at having achieved?
So much. So much.
I
If
love that answer.
if I have to pick one thing, I would say the human spirit.
Right.
It's not about technology. The
Yeah.
human spirit in the industry, especially the human spirit that both my team at NASSCOM and the industry showed in the crisis,
Right.
where it wasn't just about me and myself, it was about all of us.
Yeah.
It was about, okay, this works for me, let me quickly share it with the rest so
Nice.
everybody can benefit. It was about that realization that we are in this together and we have to come out of this crisis stronger together, and then we can figure out how to compete with each other. But as an industry we have to come out of this stronger. And was a huge learning moment for me. I mean, it was fascinating to see how it played out. And the other thing was I realized that um, you know profitability and people go hand in hand. I mean, I always knew it, but I think the crisis really drove that home, because when I remember we were expecting the lockdown, and at that time, if you remember, Kavri, a lot of our companies could not do have work from home
Right.
because of the OSP guidelines. And all of us, I was in day-to-day discussions with CEOs saying, what do we do? Um, there was always two things on the table. Hey, we have to figure out how do we keep employees safe.
Right.
Priority one. And we have to figure out how to ensure we keep business running.
Right.
It was never, it can't be an either or story.
Right.
We have to do both. So we need to find a way where we achieve both objectives. And
Right.
we cannot compromise on either. And I think the power of that conviction and the power of that belief forced us to think differently and come up with a solution which actually enabled the industry do both, which is, where remote working
Right.
became a reality for this industry. So yeah, if I have to celebrate one thing, and I'm really, really proud. I'm so proud of the way the industry helped in
Yeah.
COVID, from opening up kitchens to
Yeah.
opening up campuses to create quarantine centers, um, to providing food to migrant laborers, to of course helping with their technology to fight, to help governments fight the pandemic. I mean, there was just so much that happened.
You're right. I think it was quite tremendous. I agree. And this conversation leaves me with so much hope for the future. So I hope it leaves our viewers as well. Hey, Johnny, one last question. Really, are we in a world where each of us can be like a bespoke expert in our areas, customizing ourselves according to what the market demands and, yet sort of working in some collective?
See, I think we have to have some subject depth,
Yeah,
whatever the subject.
whatever. You have to have
You,
a domain expertise. Yeah,
you have to have some level of subject matter expertise. You have to have some level of domain expertise,
yeah.
because um, jack of all trade is unfortunately may not cut it for you.
Right.
So I think it's very important to have that. But I think even more important is my earlier point: the hunger to learn, the
Yeah.
willingness to learn, uh, training yourself to learn quickly becomes tremendously important. Because today, if I'm super super excited about artificial intelligence, and tomorrow suddenly I realize how bigger an impact quantum computing can have, do I have the ability to learn quickly,
Yeah.
and figure out what it means for our industry? um, Otherwise, unfortunately, in a world that is changing so fast, um, you will become outdated very fast.
What is the one thing that you learned in the pandemic in terms of any new skill that you picked up? Did you work at it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been saying that I wish I had learned how to code. I wish I had learned how to code as a kid. So I did use the pandemic to learn how to code.
Oh, love.
And I'm very very proud of my uh, still growing, but whatever minimal coding skills I have, at least I can make things move, and I'm super
Right.
happy with that. So I did learn that. I did learn. I took up yoga in a
Okay.
big way, and I've got pretty far as yoga is concerned. I've done, and just this was such an awesome time because uh, before the pandemic, I used to use the 3 hours I spent traveling up and down to office and home, listening to certain podcasts,
Yeah.
etc.,
Yeah.
to keep the mind active. But I've rediscovered the joy of holding a book and reading, because I wasn't traveling, and I have just been going crazy. I've been finishing like 4 5 books a week, and it's been just so fascinating.
What is the one thing you read recently which you recommend to everyone?
Two things. I keep all my books here. I
Yeah.
mean, the ones that I'm currently reading.
Yeah.
So the two that I just finished and I absolutely loved, one is this one, Transformation in Times of a Crisis.
Uh huh.
It's a fabulous, it's about the IT industry, but I think anyone can relate to it. It's a fabulous book on how the industry and companies should transform and what is it that they should be looking at or not looking at. It's a brilliant, brilliant, very well written. And this is by my dear friend Shiv. This is a book that everyone who's starting a career, midway through their career, should read. It's called The Right Choice,
Right.
and it's basically what he did was he got a lot of us to share very honestly some of the biggest dilemmas we have faced in our lives,
Right.
and how we arrived at the right or the wrong decision and took it forward. And I think this is something we don't talk about, right? We always talk about, when we talk to successful people, we assume they've never had a
A
single
failure. Yeah.
problem ever in their lives, right? Which is so wrong. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, this really talks about the kind of dilemmas that one faces. And I loved both. I just finished these two and absolutely loved it.
Great. So we're going to pick those up right away. Thank you very much, Debjani Ghosh. Always a pleasure to talk to you and learn so much from you. Thank you.
Lovely talking to you, Kavri. Stay safe.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Hope you enjoyed that session. If you want to catch the other sessions, you can log on to eventexpress.com, newindianexpress.com, or even edexlive.com. If you're more of a social media person, you can also join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thank you for watching.